My name's Mark.
I'm Kelly, and this is our hope story. I had moved to Des Moines, and I was working at Principal, and that's when I met Mark on RAGBRAI.
She fell hard for me. We had a really good time. I mean, we just met, and it was Kelly's first ride. She'd never done anything like that before. Her parents were worried. I lived in Minneapolis, so I came down with my friends who I had a bike club that I grew up with here in Des Moines. And we just had a ball.
We were engaged in 3 months after that.
Yeah, her folks were thrilled. So this is somebody from another state who you met on a bike ride, and now you're going to get married. That's fantastic.
When the doctor told me that I had cancer, it didn't seem real at first. I remember Mark and I were sitting in his office, and we heard the diagnosis, but the scariest part was he didn't know how far it had spread. So I knew I had to wait several days to find out where all the cancer was. Yeah, I just kind of saw my life flashing before my eyes. You know, I thought about the kids and Mark, and I just started sobbing uncontrollably. I remember leaving the doctor's office, and we drove straight to Hope. Pam Avo was there, and she met us in the prayer chapel. And I remember I just sobbed, and you had lost it too.
It kind of felt like we kind of stepped onto the elevator, but there's no elevator there, and we went right down the shaft. It was that kind of out of control feeling. It just reminded me the unknown is so much scarier than what you know. If you know what you have, you can find a way to deal with it. The unknown is really terrifying.
I remember waking up one morning, and I just cried because I was too sick to get up. I was too sick to go back to sleep, and Mark was getting ready for work. And he came around the side of the bed, and he was just comforting me. And I remember sobbing because I felt so ugly. You know, I had lost all my hair. I had no eyebrows, no eyelashes. I was puffy and pale, bald, and it was probably one of my lowest points. And, you know, Mark was great. He hugged me, and I just told him I felt so distant from God. And he, you know, once again reminded me in the way that he does that God is with us. You know, he's right there by my side, and Mark was always my rock. And then he said, I want you to get up and come look out the window. And I thought, I don't want to get up and look out the window, but I did. I was crying, and he kind of led me to the window in our bedroom, and he opened the curtains, and there's this big tree in our front yard. And in February, it looked pretty gloomy. And he looked at me, and he said, Kel, that tree looks dead, doesn't it? And I was crying, and I said, yeah. And he said, you know what? It's gonna have these beautiful blooms in the spring. And then he took my chin, and he pulled me close, and he said, and so are you.
All I wanted to do is find some way to give her hope to get through the morning and say, just focus on that. It's gonna be okay. And I really had that faith and that confidence now. I knew God had it handled, and we're gonna get through this. I just knew it. I just wanted her to know it.
I mean, I cried, and you don't know how many days I sat looking out the window just waiting for that tree to bloom. Luckily it did, and I got my hair back, and yeah, I mean, that tree is just so symbolic for me in the seasons, and that was one of my lowest times, and that's when Mark helped remind me that there's hope. My husband, Mark, is in a motorcycle gang. I like to joke, it's Hope's Angels, they call themselves. And we became really good friends with the people in this motorcycle group. And I remember when I was sick, it was one night around the kitchen table, the windows were open, it was summer, and this group surprised me and wanted to show some love. And all of a sudden I heard this sound in the background get louder and louder. And Mark and I went to the front door, and even neighbors were coming out now to see what was going on. And all these motorcycles came around the corner, up into the driveway, on the grass. And it was Hope's Angels because they wanted to make some noise for Cal. I'll never forget in Big Country, that's what we call our good friend Bill Matthews, came, gave me a hug, and he had this cross on a stake, and he held it up high, and he said, "Faith lives here, and where there is faith, there's no room for fear." And he slammed that stake in the ground, and he said, "May the devil be horrified and God be glorified." And everybody cheered, and then we cried, and hugged, but that was really cool. It was something I'll never, and that cross is there today. It's just such a good reminder of what God can do through support and love. Whenever I thought about the chemo and whether it was working or not or what it was doing to me, when I thought about not being here for my kids or for Mark, I was a wreck. But when I literally would read through those Bible verses of God's promises, or I would just think about, man, what is God trying to do through me for this? I was okay. I see that there's hope for everybody. There really is, and it doesn't matter. God sometimes chooses to heal physically, and sometimes he chooses it to make part of his plan, his bigger plan. Now, it blows me away that God's using my testimony to help others. So I'm that example of hope and resurrection, and he has it for everybody. It may or may not be in the way that you think, but it's there, and he's real, and he's here, and he's with us.
It's just a reminder that sometimes we don't always have to take ourselves so seriously and just enjoy the ride. And we're just enjoying the ride. It's a good thing.